In this video, we're going to focus on how you can create a custom menu like this here, and where we zoom in here, there we are, zoom in again, and then we want to reset it, want to zoom in, and then I want to zoom out. And with this, we can start to zoom in, and of course you could do far more items, but this is like a customized menu here to give you more features in Chartjs. So let's start to look how to create the custom right-click menu in Chartjs. First thing what we need is we need to get the default code. So go to chartjs3.com, getting started, the specific link here. And once you're on this site, and you can find the link as well in the description box. So scroll down here and just copy this chunk of code here. So we have our template ready. Copy this, and if you want to understand what this video or what this all does, make sure you watch this video here. So then what I will do is I will just paste it all in there. I will cut this out, and then I'll put that in here. Save, refresh. There we are. So now we have a very basic bar chart, but if I do a right click here, we still have our original style. So what I want to do here is just simple, like a zoom in option. I want to have a zoom in, a zoom out, and a reset option when I do a right click. So let's start to create a custom version. So to do this, what we first need is of course to create our div, and I'm going to just put it here below, although you can put it anywhere you want, because it is eventually based on the CSS. We'll put it somewhere outside of the entire item here, so it doesn't matter really, because it will be later with absolute positioning, so it will not impact the exact location. So what I'm going to do here is the following. I'm going to say here what I want to have, div, and then the div will be an ID, and let's give this ID very simple, a chart menu. Very straightforward. This is our chart menu, and then I'll just give it a class as well. In this class, I'll just say a context menu. And once we did this, here eventually I'll say for our default, the style is display none. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to hide it by default. It should be only triggered by right click. So then what I will make here is a unordered list. And the unordered list will also have an ordered list in here, or a list item. That's the right term, not an ordered list. And what you can say here, let's say you're zoom in. And then we have another one. Let's copy this. There we are. Zoom out. And then reset. So these are 3 individual buttons, but you can see I just use a list item. So I'm going to use JavaScript later on for this. So this will be not a real button. It's just when we click on this element, it will recognize it as a button. So now we have this here. What I want to do next is basically start to work on, well, should we have the CSS? I guess we should have the CSS, or not yet. We can make the CSS for now. Let's start to do that one. That will make sense. And basically, if we do a right click, this is what we call a context menu, and this is why I'm using here the class name of context menu. So what I will be doing here is now to start working on the CSS, and I'll just say a dot class, which is a class context, and then we can say a dash menu, and then within here we're going to give it some proper positioning and placing. So we're going to say your position will be absolute, and then once I did that, what I want to do here is, well, we can give it a proper background. What I will say here, just very simple, I'll say text align center, or text align center. I will not go too deep in CSS, but this is just to position it in the center. And then when I'm going to say your background color, I'll just say the background color will be #E, which is a nice light gray color. Then what I want to do here is I want to give it a proper border. So I'm going to say border solid 2 pixels, and then the border color will be, let's grab this color here. Very straightforward. Once we have this, then what I want to do is a border radius. So we have a border radius here, and then we say here maybe 5 pixels. What I'm really doing is basically this. When I do a right click, this element, and we can basically see the element. I guess we can just say a block for now. There you are. This is right now the positioning of it. You can see here, because it is now positioned in absolute, it doesn't understand exactly where it needs to go. Later on, we'll be making sure that we will trigger based on our X and Y position of our mouse coordinates only on the canvas, of course. So we have this here. So let's start to continue on with the design. So I'm going to say here dot context dash menu, and then we can say here within the unordered list. So basically this is a requirement, the class, and then in the unordered list, there should be an unordered list in that item. Then we're going to say here, well, I guess we can do here maybe a resetting of padding, so padding 0, and then we say here margin 0, and what we can say here, a minimum width we could do here 150 pixels. Let's save that, refresh. There we are, that's 150 pixels. And then is there a list style? Although I don't see any list style here, just to be sure, we'll say here list style equals none. So we don't have any disk or any item in there. Alright, so we have this here now. Next part, what I want to do here is on the list item itself. This is the li basically here. So those should have a proper padding and margin, or top and bottom padding of maybe 6 pixels or something like that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to grab this. I'll say here, it's in here, and I say here list item. And of course, you could do it differently. You could do a list item, give that as individual class. That's also fine. This here tend to be a bit more descriptive, can be helpful, so you know exactly which one you want to target. But going too deep like this can give you a real issue as well, because if you have too many of these items that are different, it might be struggling because they might overlap each other. Anyway, for us, we have a very limited item, so that should be fine. So we're going to say your padding, and I'll just say your padding will be 6 pixels. And then I want to say 6 pixels top and bottom, and then left and right 0. As you can see here, that looks slightly better. Then what I want to do here is, well, we could say here border. And we're going to say border, and we'll make this solid. I'm just going to grab this one, except now I will make it only 1 pixel. So just there between. Alright, as you can see here, that looks beautiful. So that looks slightly better. And then what we could do here, final one, is maybe a hover effect. And that's the hover effect will be again here. Let's grab this, put it in there, and then we say here colon hover. So we're going to trigger the hover, and then we're going to say here background, and then the background color when we hover will be this color, but then in a slightly transparency of 0.2. And then next what I want to do is a cursor, because it's not a link or a button, so I want to make sure the cursor will become a pointer as well. Save, refresh. So now if I hover over it, there we are. It becomes nice pointer, everything. So we're done here with this. I guess it's time here to hide this. Let's say here display none, and then later on we need to make sure that this is visible once we do a right click here. So for that we need to scroll down now and start to work with the functionalities here. And what we're really going to do here is the following. We need to look at what we want to target. Well, in this case, what we want to target is the chart menu, this specific ID here. Let's copy that. And so I'm going to say here, constant chart menu equals document dot get element by ID. There we are. That's the first one. And then what we want to do here is basically a function. So we're going to say here the function, and we can say here hide chart menu. And what we'll be doing here is the following. This hide chart menu will set basically our chart menu, and we say dot style dot display. We say this equal to none. The reason why we do this is to force this, of course, to none. However, this is on hide. By default, it is set on hide, and we could basically have that one, or we have it here as well. Display none or hide. So it's hidden here now because it's display none. So it's exactly the same here. The reason why we need to do this is for later on, that when we click on it and then we click away, we want to make sure it is hidden, or it will hide again. So then we have this. So now what I want to do is I want to trigger it. So how do we trigger it? Well, we say a function, and let's give this function a right click, because we will trigger the function on right click. And then we have here the event. We put that in there. Then we want to say here the first thing is we want to prevent the default response. What is the default response? Well, in this case, right click here is the default response of showing this. And if I do it here as well, same story. So we want to be very carefully what we want here. So we say here e.prevent default. And once we do this, save, we should see here now a prevention of it. Oh, not yet, of course. Why not? Well, the answer is simply we still need to connect the right click functionality here. So let's do that one right now. So what I want to do here is this. I want to say here, I want to grab the my chart, and specifically because I want to target, let's do a right click on the canvas. If you do a right click on the canvas, it should only show this menu, and otherwise we should not show it. So we're going to say here, my chart. Let me say dot canvas, because we're going to grab the canvas item, which is basically the ID here. So that's why we have this, because if you only do my chart, you get the entire chart object, and I don't want that. Then what I will say here is dot, and I say on context menu. Remember, this item here is the triggering. When we click on some, or right click, it will trigger the context menu here. So this is basically the trigger event. Then we're going to say right click. And right click, of course, is our function. Make sure we spell it correctly. Then semicolon here. So if I save this, we should see now no response. Here you are. Do a right click here, doesn't work, but if you do a right click here, it works nicely. So on here it works, but of course we need to do now something else here, which is basically we hide this, and what we want to do now is show it. That's basically the logic in here. So what we're going to do here is, we're going to say here if, and we're going to say here, if the chart menu, which is basically the div that we created, and then we say here, well, if we do a right click on this, then of course here, dot style, then we say here, dot display. I guess we don't even have to do an if, but I'm going to show you. Later on we'll be needing the if. What I'm going to do is here, just say display equals block. So we're going to set this to block, save, refresh. Right click. Alright, so now it shows here, but, of course, that's the real but, it doesn't show here up, it shows down here. That means that we still need to do some proper positioning. So that's what we're going to do now, and the positioning comes from the e-click here, or the event. So let's start to do this one now. So we show this, but now I want to show it at the right location. So if we do a console log, I'm going to say E. If I save this, and here right click, open up developer tab, you can see here now, we should see here the pointer event, and it shows us here the item. And what we truly need here is, in this case, the offset X and the offset Y, or more, maybe, or sorry, even more specifically, you could probably get this one. So let's try to make sure, because this one here will be the pixel coordinates in here, but we probably need the entire pixel coordinates because it's relative to the entire window, and not only on this, because if we do it here, it will probably recalculate. This is very important because I need to be within this window to calculate where did we click exactly on the window, and there it needs to show. So I'm going to grab this page X. So let's see if this is the correct one. Do that one, and then I need to have the page things as well. What is that? The page Y. Although I don't have to show you the console log, but what I need is the following. I'm going to say here the position, and the position here will be chart menu dot style dot left. So why I'm doing this? Because I need to know how many pixels from the left are we in comparison with the window screen here, not with the canvas, but with the window screen. This is very important. Once we know this, then we can start to position it at the right location. So then we can say here equals to E plus that. And what we can, I will just do here a what is this? What is that? A template literal, sorry, where I'm going to use backticks. So this is a template literal. And basically, we're going to use the ES6 command. All right, we get this, and I say dot pixel. So it's an easier way to concatenate. So this is the left. Then for the Y, what we need here is, of course, the top position. So once we have this, let's save that and see if this works. Right click, there we are. Right click, right click, right click. Of course, you can see here now it still doesn't undo itself, but as we do it, we are now able to get the right click here. We still need to make sure that this works, but we're getting there. So now we have this. And of course, now this is the reason why I had the if statement. We're going to do the following. So I'm going to say here if statement, and we're going to say here the following. If we do a right click, right now here you can see it start to reposition, but if I do a right click here above, I want to hide this one. So what I'm going to say here is the following. To check or to hide it, I want to first check if it is hidden or not. So what I'm going to say here, so we're going to grab this. So if this equals strict block. If that is the case, what I want to do then, in that case, I want to say get this function and trigger this function for me. So, and then else, we have this one here. I'm going to put this down there. Let's see if this will work accordingly. Save, refresh. Now if I click here, fine. Do it here. Alright, so you can see here, it has still something that doesn't work here. So if block is that, then we can say this, alright, but then we want to set this block, we should say chart menu on hide chart menu, and frankly it just doesn't work here. Am I correct with my if statement? Yes. So I'll just leave that for now and just check what's going on here. Alright, so after some testing, I already figured out what would be far more smarter. So we have this here, and we want to hide this item here when we do right click here. However, my logic here is a bit twisted. So let's cut this out and just by default hide it. Because when we do a right click anywhere on the screen, we will by default hide it. So then we have that one. And that would probably be far more logical than what we have here. And then we have this if statement, and this doesn't make any sense anymore then, or we can remove this. We can just say here, I guess we can just delete all of this and put that all in there. Let's see if this would be far better. Say right click, right click, right click. Alright. So right now it just doesn't hide yet here. So you might say, well, we're still having a problem. Well, that's correct, because what we want to do as well, if we do a right click here, it should hide it. Yeah, I guess that one would be an item as well. That's alright, I'm going to fix that one afterwards. Let's get the next item, is especially if we click here outside, at least there, we want to hide the item. Or we want to trigger this if we do a left click or any kind of click by default. So what I'm going to say here is the following. Constant, or not even constant here, we don't need that. I guess we can say here, is it maybe the document itself? So what we want to do here is the document, and then we're going to say document, and then we're going to say on click. And then if we have document on click, what I want to do is I want to just trigger especially this specific function, semicolon, save. So now, right click, if I do a left click, you can see it disappears. Right click here, right click there, and then here, left click. Alright, so now I need to just solve only one item here. Let's double check this quickly, because this here probably has a complication in it. So I'm going to check on it. Alright, so I was trying to figure out, but I cannot figure out anything yet. So I will leave it as how it is. However, it is working quite nice. Except for this issue here. I'm not satisfied with that issue, but that is the only thing I guess that we have. And if we do that one here, I will just eventually check. However, if you do a left click, it will hide. So we're not done yet, because now what I want to do is, of course, to create these zoom effects and reset. So how do we do that? Well, let's do that one now. So what we're going to do here is basically, let's go up here. And here what we're going to do is we're going to do an on click functionality. And here what I can say here, this would be maybe the chart zoom, or what is the proper name for this? I guess chart zoom is fine. And then here we're going to zoom in. To zoom in, what we can do is to zoom in, we should say here probably a -1 for the zoom in, because we want to deduct the amount, or is it the opposite? Maybe it's even a plus. Let me think. I guess the -1 is probably the right one. Let's double check it later on. Then I'm going to copy this. Zoom out will be a plus, or just normal. And then what I'm going to say here, the zoom reset. Let's put that in there. Reset. Alright, so now we have this. I'm going to make them all 3 because we have these arguments here that will help us. In this case here, I just will hard code this one. And what I'm going to do is here is going to put number 6. Why number 6? I'm going to focus only on the X scale. So then we can zoom in on the X scale here and reset it as well. So now, and 6 is because we have here 7 data points, but index or an array starts at 0 base calculation, 0 to 6. So copy this functionality, go in here, and I'm going to say a function zoom or chart zoom, and then I'm going to say here value. And then what I want to do here is the following. I want to do the value, but I need to do here then a x scale, and the x scale will have a min value of 0 and a max value of 6. As I said before, we start at 0, index 6. So that's the max. So what we want to do now is we want to pinpoint that specific item here. How do you get there? From my chart, config, from config to options, scales, x, and then min. So we're going to do that again. We say my chart dot config for configuration. Let's go up here. Then we have the options, scales, and x. Option scales dot x, and there's a dot min value. So what we want to do is we want to reassign this, and I'm going to say here this will be, I guess what we can do here is a plus equal, so it will update the value immediately. And then once we did that, I'm going to say here my chart dot update the item here. And well, this is the min. I guess we could do it. I will just focus on the max here, and the reason why is because I have here a negative value, so our max should be declining, which makes sense because we start at 6 at max. Here we start at 6, and then eventually we want to go down more and more. Of course, you could do here plus, then you have to do exactly the opposite logic, but for now I'll just leave it like that. Save, refresh. Alright, interesting. We're getting an error here, so let's see what is going on. So what I'm going to do is here open up the developer tab. Then I forgot a comma on 122. 122, as you can see here, comma, or 121, comma. Alright, right click, zoom in. There we are. Right click, zoom in, zoom out, reset. Beautiful. So let's see, did it work? Zoom in, zoom out, reset. Alright, interesting. Doesn't work here. So what we're going to do is just one more item then, because I probably have to put a restriction on here. So I want to do here, let's say console log. Let's grab this entire value and then save, refresh. Zoom in, 5, reset. Alright, interesting. So that is 10. So what we need to do here is most likely the following. I guess this could be any number, I realize. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a restriction on it, because now what I have to do is I have to basically go down multiple times until we hit the 6. There we are, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do here is an if statement, just to lock this into place. So say if the max value is bigger or equal to, in this case, 6, that's our max value. In that case, what I want to do is that max equals 6. Very straightforward, nothing fancy. We just block any further values, refresh, and now there we are. If I reset again, and then we do zoom in, it works immediately. Zoom out, there we are. So this is basically the way to do it. Of course, you can do it with buttons. You could do it with anything you want. If you want to do it with buttons, I have another one here. We show you like tiny circular buttons, which is quite nice, to be honest. And it's called this video here, how to create a HTML button in the canvas in Chartjs, where you have a reset button, but you can imagine you can do here up, down, left, right, zoom in, zoom out buttons as well.